Hello and welcome to the next episode of Real Talk with me, Katie Brown. The rating and reviews, 5-star always, like I tell you, every Tuesday. But we are full of different guests and today is a little different. I'm going to physio world. Yeah, something that I haven't really touched before, but I can't wait to have a chat to our next guest. And I would just like to say this week, if you do have a friend who you think would be interested in listening to the Real Talk podcast, make sure you share it around because I know that we've got a passionate family that's growing here at Real Talk, but the family always likes to grow. Now, our next guest, let's get straight to it because we have trailblazers, we have champions, but this man is also somebody who is incredibly supportive of the women's space. And look, we're not going to bore you with these extreme feminist views, but it is always important to have the opposite gender on our side as well. And we always want to improve the game, whether it be rugby league, AFL, any individual sport, it doesn't matter. But I would like to introduce Mick Baines, who is the CEO and founder and physiotherapist at BaiMed. Hey, Mick, how are you?
I'm good, Katie. How are you?
I'm good. Are you nervous?
Yeah, very, very.
I need to tell our listeners, when we were talking about having this chat, there was definitely like, okay, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble with this, but here we are. So no backing out now.
Okay. All right.
We'll do some icebreakers just to get you really warmed into it, okay? And I feel like you'll be able to answer these pretty well. But first injury you ever fixed?
Well, I wouldn't say we ever fixed them. I'd say the people tend to heal themselves. But the first injury I misdiagnosed was certainly a shoulder in 2001, and I still remember it well.
Oh, you know what? I love that you're vulnerable and you admitted that. Worst client?
I think it's more worst personality. I just think ego and, privilege, and which probably puts most footballers right up there in the early stage of my career, unfortunately.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait to talk to you off camera about some of those names. No. What's your go-to coffee order?
Small double shot flat white.
Yeah, nice. Good one. Party trick? Do you have one?
No, not anymore. I haven't drunk in 10 years, so my party tricks have dried out.
Ooh, good on you. I like that. What about pet peeve?
They grow by the week as I get older. Unfortunately, it keeps coming back to probably people with high talk and low walk standards, I think. I just can't stand people that set their stale to a standard that they don't come past. So that's probably where I get peeved.
High talk, low walk. I'm adding that. That is a good line. All right, Mick. One word that best describes you.
Candid.
Mm-hmm. Why so?
I think it's a little bit different to direct. I think I probably have spent the last 10 years 20 years now trying to build trust in my professional career, and some of that has to be based on just being, radically candid or truthful best I can. But I think candid's probably somewhere between blunt and direct and obnoxious.
I think that's great. I always love hearing people's one word because it takes a little bit of time. Did it take you a bit of time to figure out what best describes you?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of fluff. Like you sort of want to be respected or trusted or all those sort of things. But yeah, I don't know. That's sort of what I came up with.
Yeah, and I'm not going to prove you wrong because it's your word and you got to live with that. Now, for everybody listening, yes, Mick has worked in this elite athlete space, whether it be Olympians or whether it be NBL. NRLW has been a big baby of his and something that he's incredibly passionate about. Mick, you've worked with the Dragons, with New South Wales and also Jillaroos at World Cups. And so there's a lot to unravel, but before we do get into all of the chat about who you are and your story and what you're passionate about, there are two human beings who are very passionate about also empowering other female athletes, and that is Shane and Athena at Workplace Law. And they are a proud partner of ours here on Real Talk, and we actually cannot do this without them, which is, I guess, very raw and relevant that it is genuine help that they give people like myself and like others who are looking for some guidance in the business life. But also if you're just a female athlete, if you're a female athlete and you want some direction or you need some support and you actually just want to figure out how best to go through your contract, or if you want representation, they are genuinely passionate about helping players, not just females, gaining more skills and also have your own careers outside of your sporting field. So workplacelaw.com.au is the website you can find them on and get in contact. You don't need an arm and a leg to pay any costs either. They do love to help and just be of assistance, and also Workplace Law AU on Instagram. So with that being said, Mick, it's now your time to shine. And I would love to give our listeners some background on how you and I came into communication. It was through Holly Wheeler, actually, because I love taking recommendations from people. And it's incredibly satisfying when people want to recommend someone else. And I feel like Holly's not the only woman in the NRLW space who has a lot of respect for you. She mentioned that there are a lot of players who love that you're very genuine about your help in the space. So I think where we need to start is your background as a physiotherapist and what it is that you love doing and helping with the women's space.
So I started in sport in the junior reps in 2000 down here at the Steelers. So I've sort of been involved with rugby league since then, so 23 years now. And look, super lucky and privileged along the way to have worked across all levels of sport, and not just rugby league, but over the last few years, I think there's just become a real, and it's mostly off the field stuff. So I've sort of had another side of our business and about sort of my life in the advocacy space. And it seems a little bit contrived and cliched. It's not meant to be, but just the inequality around the sort of everything from gender violence through to feminism through to, like, I feel like there's a huge space there, and then sport's over here, and sport is supposed to be this equal playing field, and it's really sort of sat poorly with me that we keep talking about how many strides forward we're making, but we're not speaking about how far behind we're coming from. And I think that's, and I love, that Holly will speak that way and a lot of the players, but I've been really blessed to have a position or a platform, I guess, that lets me support. I've always said, the best line we ever had was equal for equal, but it's such rubbish because nothing's equal. And we don't give these girls and these players and these incredible people the support that an under 16s, under 17s boy doesn't even think about, just gets and expects. And I think that's what lights the fuse for me to, push back against a lot of what's said is being happening is probably the key.
And when we talk about what's being said that's happening, there's this fine line between these female players being grateful and also expecting. And so when there are players who expect, it's almost like there is this generation who say, no, be grateful, but it's also coming from other areas as well. So at the moment, what do you believe is the biggest problem?
Look, I always come back to we don't talk about the bigger issues, which is the patriarchal society that these athletes, these females have been brought through. So they're expected to be grateful for the crumbs. And it's a tough one. I re-listened to your episode with Brad last week and actually took a lot out of it with the old and the new and how there's conflict when everyone's sort of trying, like there is a real conflict where those that have come from nothing are constantly saying, how much better is this? But to me, I think, well, where's the investment so that we can actually put on this product where, players are able to present physical shape and in the well-being space and in the financial space to be able to really present to 51% of the population what they deserve. And we only saw the other night, didn't we, with Alyssa Healy's 170. That's what happens when you make women professional. Look at Ash Barty, we look at these incredible. We're so far from that in the NRLW space at the moment. There's a long way to go, I think, is the key. And it's happening slowly, but there's a long way to go.
When we say that it is happening slowly, I think that's the argument, right? So people say, well, it's happening, but we want to make sure we're doing it the right way. Are you calling BS on that?
I warned you. I wouldn't say something that would get me sacked from anyone. I just think I feel like there's a really complex thing at play here that, you look at some of our marquee players who, struggle to get treated, to put on a product on the weekend that's got 350,000 audience, which is incredible for you can't be what you can't see type thing. But yet I feel there's a heavy burden on these players that it's at their cost. They have to make a decision around leaving work early, using up ADOs to get treated, to put on a product that the under 20s men don't have to do. And I really feel for the tip of the iceberg, that the really top players in our game, that they are carrying the burden. They're kicking the can forward in their own way. They're having to make a choice between doing overtime at work or doing rehab extras, or in their off season, they're making a choice as to spending their own cash to have performance programs, to go to gyms, to present in the shape that the game needs them to present in. So it's probably the conversations that aren't happening. And it's a tough one, because when we look at infrastructure and growth, it's those things. It's $500,000 worth of services at each club to be able to provide the infrastructure. So it's a really challenging time.
So how do we fix this? Because a lot of the talk can also be, there's going to be problems forever, but what are the solutions to those problems? Because I'm sure you communicate a lot with these players. You have been in that situation with clubs, with states, with players at the national level. So what's the common theme? What do they want?
They want the support all year round. I think that's probably the most important thing about professionalism, is it allows you to be professional.
Yeah.
And that's tough. I certainly never want to be seen to be throwing rocks from the outside, because it's really hard. Even the providers, whether it be gyms or strength coaches or physio or doctors, they've got to make a living as well. Not just the players. So we sort of, the thing about sport is we trade on goodwill a lot. We ask a lot of a certain, you look at the gear stewards or the volunteers that set up the sheds and all these things. There's a lot of volunteering along the way. But yeah, I feel like being able to offer these athletes, whether it be the NRL level down or whether it be that real go at a professional environment. And I think people would be shocked at how much isn't professional still.
What is
that's
it?
Just where they are. The clubs have done really well. I can't give a rap big enough to a lot of the NRLW clubs at the moment, because it's that when the players are theirs, then, and I can only speak for the Dragons at the moment, from surgeries to braces to specialist appointments, I can honestly say that there's no separation at our club this year. And particularly the last couple of years, players need surgery, players need everything. It's tick the pen, which is great. That's boys get, girls get. But then our season finishes after 8 weeks, and because they fall back through the cracks then to reach out to their own providers if they get hurt, if they've got medical issues, all of the things that stop them presenting as a professional in the next preseason. The onus is back on them to manage. And that's exhausting. And we've had, I can think of half a dozen girls that haven't come up for this year's NRLW because of medical or physical issues in between seasons, where they just can't simply afford to have a health fund. They can't afford to see a specialist. They can't afford to do their rehab. And I think that that's the challenge. And I loved what Brad said the other week about, the constant risk between growing big and growing small.
Yeah.
Because growing small means you can invest more in those structures to let the players be full year professionals. But again, mine's only a view from the medical and performance side. I'm not looking at the marketing and the advertising side and that sort of thing. But there's when there's the real elite of our game who are, they're speaking around how they can't do their management rehab because they've got to go to work and then come to training after hours. And, we're asking girls to drive home from training at 9:30 at night whilst being the elite professionals. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, there is such a separation. And we're in this really awkward time with the NRLW that there's so much want for it to be this elite sport where athletes can get paid an income that can prevent them from having to have full-time jobs. On the other side, there is this argument that they don't bring in enough money and that there's no commercial gains of this sport. Yet, my belief, and I feel like you're on the same page, is that if you don't ever invest in a product properly, you will never make a profit on that product. So I think there needs to be a decision made as to, for this next broadcast rights deal, to heavily invest. And at the moment, they're working with the RLPA. And I really hope that the RLPA make a really strong stance at hearing from those players and jotting down points that are a must. And I know in that recent expansion that they've talked about, all players that are signed for that next NRLW season here in 2022, they will have private health insurance. For yourself being a medical professional, that is invaluable, right?
Yeah, I think they have that already, to be fair. I think it's the problem is that when they go from comp to comp in the same year, or when there's multiple between teams, the actual NRL, the tip of the spear has all, my understanding is it's always had health fund. It's more around who's looking after health and injuries between seasons.
Yeah.
Because you think about the boys, they finish their contract in the last day of September and start their new contract. Also, last day of October, start their new contract the first day of November.
Mm-hmm.
So they're always contracted. That they're probably the in that sort of space. Who's responsible between contracts?
So the problem one problem is not being covered for medical help when that NRLW season is over. But what we would like to see is to have medical support for an entire year. Especially with these competitions growing, that would be a good happy medium.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the general public wouldn't realise is even the concept of being reimbursed becomes a real burden. So, it's brilliant if someone is reimbursed, but they're out of pocket multiple $1,000s for multiple months. And if we pull it back to an 18-year-old on contract in the boys system, they're never out of pocket. Because they're contracted. So even the reimbursement becomes a challenge, because for some of these players, the thought of being out of pocket for a few months is too much. The burden is too much. It falls back on the player. And they're the little things that they're a real stress for the playing group to be out of pocket.
So if I'm playing NRLW in game 1 and I injure myself, I'm fine because I am contracted at that time. But when I go back to the state and I'm playing in my state competition, Harvey Norman Women's Premiership or QRLW, that is when I may get reimbursed if I have a deal in the future, but I'm not contracted. There we go. Yeah, see, that's something that.
And how do you present for your next season if you're niggling for 2 months through your BHP or your Harvey Norman comp?
Yeah, well, you can't. And you would probably have to say, okay, fine, I'll take the minimum 4K, which will now be hopefully 6 or 8. But again, it's a 350K pool for 24 players coming into this NRLW 22. Is there any other medical issues that we could really get some insight on that need improvement?
Just the time. The biggest issue at the moment in the game is time. So, to my knowledge, the clubs at the top level train after hours, and so it's having that ability to access medical, physio, osteo, whatever it is, through the day. It falls back on the goodwill of those associated with the clubs, because the common theme that I got back from a lot of the playing group that I spoke to over the last few weeks is, we're still at that stage where, as a rule, there's one physio, one strength staff for a squad of 28 that shows up. I mean, this year's chaos with the rapid testing, because you can't get into the facility. So you get in there 40 minutes before they're on the field with 26, 28 players, and you're strapping and you go. I think they're the little things where, when you compare it to a fully professional program like the Sevens or the Australian cricket team, medical, physio, rehab's all done through the day because that's your job.
Yeah.
At the moment, even with, the top of our game, it's work through the day, and, physio, rehab, medical's at training. And they're little things, but, that's just making sure as we go in. And I certainly don't want anything to do with the dollars and the salary cap and the collective bargaining and that sort of thing. But I look at it from a staffing point of view, really investing in that, because when we look at the W League and those sort of programs, they're still looking at it from the point of view of, let's get a young, enthusiastic staff with no experience who'll do it for nothing. And what we know from these top athletes is they're sick of that.
Yeah.
They're actually saying to their clubs, no, get me the best doctor, give me the best physio, get me the one with 15, 25 years experience, and pay them so that we can access them. Now, that sounds like a sales pitch for me. It's not what it is, but the clubs, the best strength coaches, not the young, enthusiastic person that wants to carve their way, because the players are asking for so there's this constant battle of resources, and you're right, there's not many resources at the moment for anything.
And in rugby league, we know that players are going to be injured. It is a contact sport, and we see it week in, week out. We've seen it through the NRLW seasons, heartbreaking injuries. So when they want the best of the best, that has a big dollar sign next to it as well. You have over 20 years experience. So clearly you're one of some who have a lot of experience but have gone, okay, well, I'm willing to help you because you're passionate about it. So what was the situation for you being involved with all these clubs? Have you just had to take none or minimum money?
I know. Again, we've sort of evolved. We've been really, I guess what we look at is there's a bigger picture here. We know that women control 94%, give or take, of discretionary spend in the household. So there's an incredible business opportunity for people to partner with the game at every level. So for me, there's the supporting role, but there's a bigger picture. There always is. But that's when you've probably got a bit of scale around you. I don't know. It's a tough one. It's again, I referring back to Brad last week with a lot of the stuff around. We need this game to be the women's game. We don't need this game to be an add-on to the men's game. And that's hard when the women's game's only been 5 years in the semi-professional era. So it's hard to, the temptation is to go and steal all the systems from the NRL.
Yeah.
But I think we probably need to stop that and actually create our own systems and our own the way of doing it. So it is a really challenging one. I certainly don't profess to have the answers, but I think our athletes deserve better than expecting everything to be volunteered around the edges. And for our circumstances at the Dragons, and we've absolutely looked at it as part of a bigger picture, so that the same business that supports the 20s and the 18s and the 16s supports the NRL, supports the women. So it's a sort of catch-all, but that's very circumstantial for us.
Yeah,
we're pretty fortunate.
Well, it already starts as a hard one to win when it's a semi-professional comp, yet the women are expected to play like professionals and as good as the professionals. So as soon as that doesn't happen, there is this belief that they shouldn't be getting paid or treated equally like the men. And look, it's a work in progress. But is there anything else that has been on your mind that you've spoken to the players about that you'd like to voice to educate us?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing for me, and this is where I tread the line. I just think that probably the biggest criticism I have for those that have come out of the men's game back into the women's game is this constant expectation that this is how I am, this is how footy is. You need to accept this. And this is absolutely not specific to anyone in particular, but these are some of the really good people that I know in footy, and I feel like there really needs to be an onboarding or an education module to work in women's sport. I think there was a great welfare piece came out at the start of the year around shame and gender-based violence and trauma, and like I feel like mandatory reading of Eggshell Skull or the Invisible Women, Carolyn Perez, like things about the place you're walking into is not your environment. You came from rugby league, but this is women's rugby league. And so the players are women. They're not like men, they're women. And so the way we speak, the way we raise our voice, the context of aggression, I feel like that space still needs to be really like a working with children's check, but a working with women check. Like I think we look at 1 in 3 have experienced gender violence, 1 in 4 some form of sexual assault or coercive behaviour. So if we know that that's our cohort, we need to make sure that people that put their hands up to work in this space come in knowing that. And I just feel like there's a real tendency to say, but this is how I do footy. And I've got all these skills to give, but this is how they have to adapt to me, when really it's that there's 26 or 28 women there.
Yeah.
And I think that the support of the high skill of the male sport needs to be tempered by the acknowledgement of it's not men's sport.
Wow.
And it's funny, Katie, like when I look at warm-up, every male that's come out of men's sport can't help, Bell's at 2:28, warm-up finishes at this time. Now, we had a situation on the weekend. We had 2 cubicles in a dressing shed for 18 players to come off warm-up. Now, we set up our prep based on what we know from men's sport, where there's a whole urinal and showers and sinks and all sorts of stuff, right? But we now have anxieties and pressures around the time because we've got 2 toilets.
Yes. It's those little things.
It's mind-blowing what's not
what's not there, what's not available. I won't let you go off. Hey, what were those 2 books that you mentioned? Can you read those for me?
For me, Eggshell Skull, Bree Lee, which is terrifying around obviously violence and Eggshell Skull, but Carolyn Perez, Invisible Women.
Okay. That's good to know. We will add to the I'll add to the podcast notes, because I think our listeners are pretty onto it, and our viewers, and they'll want to be able to educate themselves on that as well. Mick, we are just about coming up to time. And you've lasted, you haven't said a swear word, you haven't blasted any individual. I think you'll still have your job in rugby league. If not, maybe you can come do some work for Real Talk.
All right, just disclaimer, apologies.
No.
I think everyone's trying. Everyone is trying. I absolutely never want to come across as someone who's there's a lot of work to do, and we're all here trying to help. I do believe that.
Yeah, and I think it's just about making sure that the place is full of good people who are genuine about helping, and you're one of them, and the women would not have recommended you for me to have a chat with to help grow the great game if you weren't. So I really appreciate you coming on, Mick.
you. Thanks,
Yeah. Before we do go, we need to thank Workplace Law, because Shane and Athena and the team at workplacelaw.com.au are here to help women. They are also on board. They're just like Mick Baines at BaiMed. And if you want to learn how to manage your own career, your workplace, or any contracts, then you can get in touch with the directors, Shane and Athena, because they're passionate about helping players. And if you want some guidance through some player contracts, some personal branding, any incidents or advice or representation, you can get in touch with Workplace team, because they just want to help you have confidence in your own careers on and off the field in sport. So we're very appreciative of that partnership. As for us, we're going to be back the same time, 7 a.m. on Tuesday, with another episode of Real Talk. Leave us a rating, a review, and again, if you missed this episode, you can always watch a replay. Mick Baines from BaiMed, the CEO and founder, and a genuine female supporter in the women's sporting space. We are very grateful for his time. Until next Tuesday, have a good one.